this mimer is very similar to a mimer that we learned, I believe, in the Dvar Malchus 2 weeks ago. And for some reason or other, they put it out of order. So the mimer of 2 weeks ago on the Dvar Malchus was, I believe, from Purim, Tavshin Lamed Gimel. And this is from Shabbos Parshas Vayikra Zachar, the day before Purim. For some reason, they decided in the Dvar Malchus to put it out of order. Don't know why. Okay. Siyat Shmaya Shabbos Parshas Vayikra Parshas Zachar Gimel Sheni Tavshin Lamed Gimel. Zachar Shas Locha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to Stayim, the includes over there. When Hashem will give you a rest, will release you from all your enemies. You shall eradicate, you shall erase any memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Do not forget. We need to understand that Rebbe asks, seemingly there's a contradiction from the beginning to the end. Initially, he says, remember what Amalek did. It just says, remember, without any condition. Without any limitations of time. How long? When? When do you have to remember? When don't you have to remember? Always. No limitation. Especially according to what's explained in the commentaries on Chumash. Zachar, the usage, the grammar of the word Zachar is in present tense. Lashon Hoive indicates something that's constant, similar to what it says in the Aseres HaDibros, use the term Zachar v'Shomer. It's a constant, ongoing thing. It's not something that is it's not something that's was and you'll have to do. It means a constant thing. It's a constant command that has to be in every time. Afterwards it says, when Hashem will give you a rest, will release you from all your enemies, that's when Timcha Zecher Amalek, you shall erase any memory of Amalek. That the erasing of Amalek, eradicating of Amalek has to be only after it became state situation that Hashem released you from all your enemies. So we see that there is a condition to the destruction of Amalek. It's conditional on something else taking place first. Whereas Zachar Shasach Amalek means constant. We see this condition expressed, especially according to the words of the Gemara, Sholosh mitzvahs and Stav Yisrael, Nisas and La'aretz, Yidden were commanded in 3 mitzvahs when they entered Eretz Yisrael. Mitzvah number 1 is Lahamid Lamelech, to appoint for themselves a king. Another mitzvah is Lahachris Arish Amalek, to cut off any seed, any descendants of Amalek. The third mitzvah is V'livnis Lam Beis HaBchira, to build for themselves a chosen house, to build a Beis HaMikdash. I knew this means raising of Amalek, eradication of Amalek has to be only after you appoint a king. So if it's only after you appoint a king, so how does that fit in with what we're talking about over here? You understand the reason that the command of Zachar is only in regards to Amalek, not concerning other nations. And when it comes to other nations, you don't have this type of idea that you must remember. Seemingly, in every generation, the nations of the world attack the Eden, like it's related in different form of the Nevi'im. Even on the way going out of Mitzrayim itself, Amalek wasn't the only one that attacked them. The Knani fought with them, Sichon and Oig fought with them, and Bilam was attacking them, and so on. Like the expression in the language of the one who compiled the Haggadah, in every single generation they stand upon us to destroy us. But Hashem saves us from their hands. So if so, so why is the command of remembering specifically of Amalek? What makes him so special, so unique over all the people that want to destroy the Eden? Like the expression is, if you get in line, take a number. Every person, every nation wanted to destroy the Eden. Why do we make such a big deal about Amalek? Also, when you understand what he says, top of page 12, remember what he did to you. There only has to be the idea of remembrance. In the expression Zachar, it seems to indicate there's a mitzvah of remembering. That's enough. Seemingly, since the whole idea of the remembrance is to negate the idea that he encountered you in the way, and like we'll speak about later, that he cooled you off in the way. He should have given some type of explanation in it and like elaborated and said, remember to something about Amalek. Remember to destroy Amalek. Doesn't say remember to destroy Amalek, just remember what he did. Why does he say only the idea of remembering? Move on. So from all of this, it's understood. When we come to the conclusion of all this, it's understood. First, there's Zachar. Before destruction, there's Zachar alone, remembering. And as we'll explain the Maimer, the benefit of remembering. What is remembering? Then there's V'inyan Min Melech. Then there has to be the idea of appointing a king. And only after this there could be the eradication of Amalek. Therefore, we need to understand what's the connection between all these things. There has to be remembering, there has to be Minu Melech, and there has to be only afterwards, once we have these different things in place, then there can be the destruction of Amalek. It's based line 10. Given behag the mama were more of saying the Sieno, Allah Pasuk, gracious going Amalek, Vachrise other open. This will be understood by first prefacing what's explained to Amar the Rabbeim on the Pasuk that the head of the nations is Amalek, the beginning of all the nations is Amalek, and his end is to be lost forever. Now, a lot of what we're going to learn the next few pages is going to sound very familiar because it's very similar to the same Maimer that was said on Purim in Tafshin Lamed Gimel, which we learned about a week and a half ago. It says, what's the reason that the end of Amalek is that he's destroyed forever? In other words, there's no aliyah, there's no transformation, as we'll explain. When it comes to the 7 emotional attributes, the 7 nations, there one could do something about them. One could transform. So he says, Goyim. The reason why he's destroyed forever is because he's the beginning of all the nations. Enables Shain Reishis, in the expression Reishis, Yeshnei Pirush, there are 2 meanings in how we could explain Reishis, the beginning. Pirush Arisha, the first explanation is Shagam Hu Nichol Beinyanim Shu Reishis Aleim Ela Shu Arisha Shabineh. When we say Reishis, could be that he's included in whatever category he is the beginning to them, but he's the first amongst them. Just like you use the word Rishon, Hayom Yom Rishon LaShabbos. So the first day of the week, Sunday, it's part of the days of the week. The same thing, Reishis could be like Rishon. It's the first, but it's part of that category. That's one way of translating the word Reishis. A second way of explaining the word Reishis, that he's outside of them and he's not counted amongst them. Very interesting. Even in Rishon, we find a similar thing. It says, concerning chametz in Pesach, it says, but on the first day you shall destroy the chametz from your house. We don't destroy the chametz on the first day of Pesach. We actually destroy the chametz. We have to destroy it the day before Pesach, on Erev Pesach. So we see also a similar idea where even a Rishon is not one of the set, but it's one beyond and higher than that. The same thing over here, he's saying another meaning of the word Reishis is that it's outside of the category, it's not counted with the rest. So now, in our pasuk Reishis Goyim Amalek V'Achrisi Adi Ovid, which one of these two meanings do we apply concerning Reishis Goyim Amalek? He says it's the second one, line 18. This is also the meaning of what it says. Beginning of Goyim is Amalek, like the second manner. Goyim and Shivim the nations, these are referring to the 70 nations. That in general, the 70 nations are branches of and ancillary to the 7 nations, which are Aknani, number 1, Achiti, Amori, Aprisa, Gashi, Achivi, Avusi. These 7 nations, like we had in the other mimer, when you have the 7, each one of them includes 10 subdivisions, so that you have 70 nations. From them branch out the 70 nations. Since Amalek is not counted in the 7 nations, he's not Canaan, he's not Chiti, Amori, Prisi, Avusi, etc. So, therefore, we must say that when it says Reishis Goyim Amalek, if he would be counted amongst one of the 7, then it would have been enumerated. Aknani, Amaleki, Achiti, etc. It doesn't call Amalek as part of those 7. So therefore, we must come to the conclusion that when it says Reishis Goyim Amalek, must be like the second way of explaining it. That Amalek is outside of the nations, and he's incomparable to them in his wickedness, in his depth of bad, and so on. The idea behind this in the service of Hashem, in a Sheva, Umis and Sheva, Midas the Klippa, the 7 nations are the 7 attributes of Klippa, as we also learned in the other mind. In other words, the 7 emotional attributes, Knani, that's Chesed, Chitis, and the word Chitas, it's fear, that's Vura of Klippa, and so on. That's why when the Yidden conquered Eretz Yisrael, when they went in with Yeshua, they only conquered the 7 nations, even though there was additional 3 nations that were promised to Avraham. There's the 3 nations of Keni, Knizi, Kadmoini. The Farshim explain it's Amoin, Moav, and Edom, Shasidim, Lias, Yerusha, Rakla, also, that they will only be an inheritance for the Yidden when Mashiach comes. How come? Why did we not conquer them initially? Because the 3 nations of Keni, Knizi, Kadmoini indicate the 3 intellectual powers of Klippa. Our avoided these days is primarily in refining the emotions. So therefore, like it's understood from what's explained in Tanya. Therefore, because our main thing is about dealing with the emotions, that was reflected as well in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael through Yeshua. It was only the 7 nations, not the 3 nations that represent the level of the 3 levels of Moich. True, together with the fact that we're saying that it's a level of the emotional attributes, but still in all, that doesn't mean that it's only emotions, there's no intellect whatsoever. We do need intellect to function and to deal with the emotions. Avoid the avoid of refining the emotions, does come about through intellect. The Mevur B'Tanya, like explain in Tanya by days, bonus the Gal Savaya, through meditating the greatness of Hashem, Nasis Yisodis, every year it becomes the awakening of the emotions of love and awe of Hashem. Behind this means Shaideshim is born in Begadus Havaya through meditating in the greatness of Hashem, and it becomes inspired in the love of Hashem. He transformed his foreign love, that he has love, meaning for foreign things, for non-holy things. He could transform it to a love of Hashem. In a similar vein, the midah of fear, that he could transform his fear from physical things to spiritual things, like the father of the Baal Shem Tov, Rebbe Lezer told his son, that Baal Shem Tov, when he was a child, you should only fear Hashem, and whenever fear comes upon you, you should remind yourself of the fear of Hashem instead, and that's what you should be fearful of. Midas, highest spiders, and say so to the midah of either pride or the midah of purification. All of that should be done in a way of transforming from via the intellectual process, via these bonus begadlus Hashem, to bring it from inspires in gashmistic things to ruchni. Al derech ze b'shara midas shem anfei yirava but all the same, so too the rest of the midas, they are the branches of awe and love and their offspring. So therefore, what applies to those midas, Av and Yira, apply also to the rest. Now, Mashakos, this idea of the association between intellect and the emotions, that's what it says in the pasuk. Eim habanim smecha. It says over here, im. It's a mistake. It's supposed to say eim habanim smecha. The mother of the children rejoices. Shaidei ha'izbanim is the bina. Shenikras eim, through the meditation of bina, that's called mother. Zayin nasa hamidas banim. So then the midas, the children of the mother, which are the emotions, they become in such a manner, the mother of the children rejoices. Just like in a physical, simple sense. Just like a mother takes pride in the children when the children is supposed to be. The way that children are, the way they're supposed to be. They act in accordance with the mother's wishes, the same thing. When the mother, Bina, brings forth the midas, to be in accordance with the intellectual understanding of the greatness of Hashem, the love and all the other midas should be focused in Kedusha. This causes the level of simcha in Bina. This is the level where Bina rejoices. So, if so, how is that we're saying that it's only the midas that we're doing now, not the intellect? The intellect are important for the midas as well. Says in line 13, but the meditation of Bina that has to be now. It's not meditation the way it's on its own. Because the refinement of the intellect will only be in the future, like we mentioned before. Only concerning its effect on the midas. That is the function of the intellect now. So therefore, this means through meditation, then you refine the emotion. How do you refine the emotions? First, you make sure that the emotion should be sublimated to Kedusha, and afterwards you transform the emotions to Kedusha. But it's still intellect, not pure intellect. It's in the service of emotions, and therefore it's not the avoida of Mashiach's times, which is pure intellect. But the main point that he's trying to bring out over here is that the avoida now is the avoida of emotions, and that is the idea of the refining of the 7 emotional attributes. That's the rest of the Goyim. That's the 7 nations that we conquered in Eretz Yisrael. Any questions? Line 20 on the 3rd page of your printouts. Though when it comes to the emotions, you could use intellect to fix them up, but Amolek, is not able to be fixed through intellect. The idea of Amalek is a chutzpah that is not based on reason. The power of Amalek is not because of any type of explanation and clarification. The chutzpah of Amalek is a king without a crown. What is the expression of a king without a crown? Like a king. It's a very great position, a very great height, but all he's lacking is the royal crown. But in Chassidus, he explains it's an unreasoned type of arrogance. Behind this means in Amalek's own mind, there is no explanation and no reason for the way he acts in a way of haughtiness and so on. Just even he himself understands. It has to be the opposite of what he's doing. His whole power, top of page Ches, is only the power of chutzpah, because he understands he's wrong. And even though he understands he's wrong, he's still going full force ahead with whatever his plans and schemes are. We can say to him is even more so. Not only does he understand that it should be the opposite of the way he's acting, but Amalek knows his master and he tends to rebel against him. Behind him, this means because he has a knowledge and awareness of godliness. And he also knows that this is his master. And still in all, he rebels against him. And not only does he rebel against him, he intends to rebel against him. This understood concerning the clip of Amalek. It doesn't help the idea of meditating in the greatness of Hashem, just like it would help concerning the 7 nations that over there were saying. How do you deal with the midas of Klippa? You meditate and you show them the beauty and the greatness of Hashem, and that brings them a love of Hashem and an awe of Hashem and so on. But Amalek, that won't help. Even now, he knows his master. And still in all, he intends to rebel against him. So what's going to help to explain it to him? He knows this already. He knows everything already. It's not going to help. So he said in line 11, that's the idea that the beginning, the first, the top of the Goyim is Amalek. That the meaning is that what's it mean? He's the first, that he's beyond and outside of the nations, like we said before, because he's a different category, really. He called Goyim after my days oneness. All the nations, meaning all the 7 emotional attributes, you could refine them, you could elevate them through meditating in the greatness of Hashem. My thinking, Amalek is opposed to Amalek, Shinyon, chutzpah bli tag, the idea of Amalek is a chutzpah without a crown. It's impossible to refine it and refine Amalek through meditation. No. Even since Amalek is, after all, the beginning of the Goyim, so there must be a relationship over here. What's the relationship? So here he says, this is a new point which we didn't have in the other minor, that Amalek is not just his own problem, and the 7 nations are their own problem, but being the beginning of all the Goyim, Amalek influences the Goyim and makes them more difficult to be refined, just like he's impossible to refine. So he explains, line 17, now removing it's understood, the clips Amalek through the power of the clip of Amalek, the power of the chutzpah that's not based on reason and knowledge, Isn't it toisiv toikiv gamba klipa de shiva amamin? It also is added power and strength in the clip of the 7 nations that they like learn and take from his stubbornness too. And we see that from the famous example that the Gemara, that the Chazal says. The idea behind this is Dvar Malchus We concerning Amlek, it says that he met up with you on the way. And the Chazal say Asher Karcha is related to the word kar, that he cooled you off. This is similar, it's a metaphor for this, from a boiling hot bath. No creature could enter it, because it was so hot. Came one wicked person and jumped into it. Even though he burned himself because it was too hot to enter. He made it cold before others. The same thing the Chazal explained, that Am Yisrael was like, all the nations were in awe of the Yidden, and everybody was terrified to touch them after what they saw happen in Mitzrayim, in Kriyas Yamsuf, and so on. And Amalek came and jumped in, even though he was burnt by the process. But once Amalek jumped in, the other nations said, it's not maybe as bad as we thought it is. He cooled it off before others. What do we see from this medrash? We see that Amalek is not just wickedness for himself, but he influences the other nations as well. The same thing, but Ruchni is, Amalek is not just his own problem, but he influences the Midas as well. That's what he says in line 24. Amalek also influences the other bad Midas. Not only will they have their own type of power and strength and that they come up on their own because they're Midas, they will also have the power and strength that's a result of the level of Amalek. And he explains, similar to what we find that the Zohar refers to, that there's the mountains of darkness in the worlds of Kedusha. There's the expression in Chazal concerning somewhere far away in the darkest forests or whatever. It's called the mountains of darkness. And in Kedusha, there's also mountains of darkness. Mountains goes on a level of Midas, Chassidus explained. And darkness means the Midas, way they are rooted in a place that's beyond revelation, in Kesef. Gam la'achreshim is my days of even after these midas that their source is in Kesef are now brought to the fore through understanding and comprehension, through the meditation that a person has, through his seichel. The midas, even after they are brought into being because of the intellect, but they have the full power of the midas as they were prior to the intellect. Intellect usually limits things. Intellect usually gives things a certain box and shouldn't break out of it. But emotions, by its very nature, is something that like breaks out of the box. So even when intellect brings the emotions to Kedusha to the fore, it will surpass the intellect that brought it to its being. And in a similar vein, he's going to explain how that is by Klippa, as we will continue tomorrow.